and taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.
Welcome to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and we are coming to you live from the Hy-Vee Club Room. With a very enthusiastic audience, quite obviously. They haven't eaten yet, so well, we'll see what happens. Anyway, as we have done for many months now, we're going to start with our health segment. Emily Rose Shaw, who is our health coach, is here. And following Emily, we're going to be talking to our special guest. Liam Scheff is preparing fresh, local, healthy food. And yes, his name is a play on words. Yes, very interesting. And Bev Merson is here, and she has an interesting food-related movie kind of thing to talk about, right? And I'm sure there'll be plenty of other things that will go on because there always are crazy things that happen during this show. Some of them very unexpected. Anyway, Emily Rose Shaw, our health coach, is here, and welcome. We're very excited to have you, as always. You're looking just stellar.
Thank you.
Appropriate response. Great. We've been exploring the many connections between relationships and food. What will we discuss on this program?
So today's topic, I really want to build on our personal relationship with food by adding in the element of eating with other people. We're going to discuss how to eat healthy and stay slim on vacations and at restaurants. And now I realize...
Good luck.
Now I realize that going on vacation, eating at restaurants is a time not to maybe follow a strict dietary regimen, that you want to let loose and relax. But there are some simple strategies you can use to stay on your path to an optimal diet without completely sabotaging your diet. And there will always be times that we indulge in our favorite foods. I certainly do. It's okay. But if you indulge all the time, you're probably not going to like the outcome. So let's look at some of the strategies.
All right, so let's start out because it's summertime and many people take vacation in the summer. So what are your suggestions for eating healthy while you're on vacation?
So unfortunately, we still have a long way to go with options on the road, in airports, in trains, or whatever mode of transportation. We're still having a little bit of difficulty getting that piece in place. So the number one thing is to prepare. The more we prepare, the better. And effort, I think, is really well worth it. So preparing food, if you're traveling by car, you can pack quite a bit in there. You can take a cooler, you can put a lot of fresh foods in there. And then if you're traveling by plane, you can pack the meals that you're going to be eating for the day of. So just some simple travel-proof healthy foods that I thought of. First of all, taking a wrap instead of a sandwich is something I like to take a lot. You can put all different kinds of fixings in there. Fruit, the original fast food, is great. Whole pieces of fruit. Chopped vegetables and hummus, nuts and seeds, rice cakes. Homemade popcorn is really delicious and yummy to take, or kale chips. And if you're trying to lose weight, I recommend steering clear of those energy replacement bars. They tend to have a lot of sugar, and I don't know about you guys, but they kind of make me feel not quite satisfied, kind of like making me just want to eat something more, kind of a tease. So stick to whole foods. That's always seems to be the rule of thumb. And then the next step is then to prepare where you're going to be getting the rest of your food. So let's use technology. There's a lot of online websites these days that will tell you, what your options are in terms of restaurants and grocery stores. There's a resource called happycow.net that specifically lists vegetarian-friendly grocery stores in various areas. I think it's even international. And there's plenty of other websites as well. And then get your food from a grocery store instead of fast food restaurants. So, for example, I've been traveling a little bit and going through some small Iowa towns where there's not a lot of options, but there's usually one grocery store, and you can usually find different kinds of fruit, including avocados. Slice open an avocado and eat it. It's delicious. Nuts, salad bar, hot food bar, prepared salads, wraps, yogurt. These are all things that most grocery stores have.
All right. Now, let's transition. What about restaurants?
Okay, restaurant. So again, preparation and having strategies in mind before you go is really the key. So before going to a restaurant, again, many menus now are posted online, so you can check out what they have to offer. And then that way, you're also not sitting there with your face stuck in the menu. You're engaging with your friends and your family at the restaurant. And then you're not pressured by time and it gets to you and you're like, oh, what do I get? You kind of have some idea. And also eat something beforehand if you're hungry, so you're not starving, you're not tempted to eat the entire bread basket when you get there. So then you're at the restaurant. And as we all know, some of the biggest problems with restaurants are portion control and high-calorie foods. So many of the following strategies are some ideas for these problems. So before you order, don't be afraid to ask questions if you can possibly substitute something. The more we speak up, the healthier options there are going to be available for us. And a lot of chain restaurants will now have nutrition information next to the entrees. They'll even have whole sections of lower calorie, lower fat options, so look for that. And I recommend ordering off the menu instead of ordering from a buffet. All you can eat sounds kind of good, but it's not quite as good. The outcome isn't quite as good as it sounds. You can always, of course, share an entree, which is also can help you save money. And ask for the doggy bag when your entree first comes. You could put half of it in there, and then you could just have what you're going to eat on your plate. It's an idea, again, for portion control. And always order a salad with your meal. A lot of entrees will come with a small salad, and you can get the dressing on the side, and you can eat that first so that you're starting your meal with some healthy, fresh vegetables. And then try to choose tomato-based dishes instead of the Alfredo creamy-based ones if you're trying to lose weight. And you can order steamed, baked, broiled, poached, or grilled instead of things like fried, sautéed, buttered, creamed. So just pay attention to some of the wording on the menu. It can give you clues as to how it's prepared. You can swap out a starch for vegetables. For example, if you're going to order salmon, you could get it with steamed vegetables or a salad instead of rice or something else like that. And then last week we talked about high sodium foods being a big problem in restaurants. So look for things like teriyaki, soy sauce. You can ask for a low sodium soy sauce. Also pickled and smoked foods tend to have a lot of salt in the restaurants. So if you're concerned about your salt intake, you can try and avoid those. And drink water so that all your calories you're actually chewing. It's amazing how if we order a beverage like a soda or a drink or something like that, it's amazing how we can just slurp up all these calories and not know that we're doing that because we're engaged in conversation. And if you're going to be drinking, stick to wine or light beer. A lot of mixed drinks have more calories. If you're not very hungry, consider ordering an appetizer, or some restaurants will even let you order off the kids' menu. If you want dessert, order one dessert for the whole table so everyone can get a bite. And Steve, we talked about this last week. If you're going to splurge on a meal, let's say you're splurging on lunch, compensate by maybe having a lighter dinner. And another example for dessert, if you know that you want a dessert, maybe you just get a salad and dessert or an appetizer and dessert, and then really enjoy that dessert and practice mindful eating and enjoy every bite. So the bottom line is you don't have to use all these strategies by any means, but they are available to you to pick and choose which ones you might want to try. So you can eat well and enjoy your vacation, be healthy all at the same time. And also, don't forget to exercise. If you're, on a road trip, take advantage of the hotel gym, especially if you've had a heavy meal.
That's great. What about the action step? We should all go on vacation. That should be part of the action step.
Yeah, so go on summer vacation and plan ahead by trying out, a healthy snack. Bring a healthy snack. So maybe you try making popcorn. That's one of my favorite things to bring. Organic popcorn.
That's our health coach, Emily Rose Shaw. You can find her at emilyroseshaw.com. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you very much.
Okay, just a couple of quick things in relation to what you were talking about.
Okay.
Because I think that one thing that we need to remember is when we go to a restaurant, we are the consumer, we're the customer. So it's fine to ask whatever you need to ask. You don't need to be bashful. So many people feel like they can't inquire, or if there's something wrong with their food, they can't tell the weight person, what they need. And at the same time, I would also say that you should practice what I would call a good etiquette at a restaurant. Sometimes things are, you might want to think about what you're asking for before you ask for it, because sometimes your request could be a little bit out of bounds. If you have a really restrictive diet, better not to go to a restaurant. Better to find a restaurant that doesn't mind taking care of that diet, but not show up and expect the restaurant to take care of all of your needs. I think that's really a little bit out of bounds.
Yeah, so look at the menu ahead of time and know what you can get.
Perfect. That's absolutely perfect. And also the other strategies that I think are, everything kind of falls into play in one particular arena, which is you really have to just exert a little bit of discipline.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like fun, but I think it's something it's a little bit of necessary, a little self-control. I'm going to tell a story really quick because I did it last week. It was so cool. I went to my favorite place to eat pizza, which is Lincoln Wine Bar in Mount Vernon, Iowa, and I said to myself before I went, I'm not going to, pig out when I'm there. It's not necessary. I'm going to just enjoy, You're right. I'm not going to pig out like last time. That's right. Thank you, Jerry, for telling on me. Anyway, the point is that I went, and it was just great because I had already made that, I'd made a decision and made a little bargain with myself ahead of time and employed a couple strategies, for example, that one being, even though all that pizza was there, it didn't mean that I had to eat it. So I had actually 4 pieces of pizza, which turned out to be about a little over, a little bit more than 1/2 of a pizza total. So I had four total pieces, and then we had some dessert. We had dessert at the Lincoln Cafe, and I figured I had about 1/3 of a dessert because I had about 1 bite of one and 2 bites of 2 others. So there you go. So and you know what? I felt great. And
you're still losing weight. So.
Not only that, but I enjoyed my meal. I didn't leave my meal going, I can't move. It's worth every bite.
Yeah. I think also when we exercise, a little discipline goes a long way also. And if we just use a little bit of discipline, I think what it also does is it encourages us to eat mindfully. So that I know when I eat mindfully, sometimes I'm guilty. I'm really busy. I'm running around. I'm like eating my food in front of my laptop or whatever. But I think if you really focus on what you're eating, you're going to be satisfied with less, and you're really going to experience the food much more. So then it becomes an experience of pleasurable eating, rather than guilt, or I'm just going to scarf down this pizza and then it's gone and I didn't even enjoy the experience.
And a perfect segue into our guest, Liam Scheff, because he's going to be essentially talking about mindful eating and also... and so, Liam, welcome to Great Taste.
Is this thing on? I get very shy. It's a man holding never mind. How are you guys out there?
They're fine. They're waiting to hear from you.
I'm not used to somebody holding a thing in front of my face like this.
It won't bite.
Okay. So, what am I supposed to do now?
Well, what you're supposed to do is just listen to me for another minute, because I talk a lot on this show. So, basically, Liam comes from a background where, is it fair to say that you were classically trained macrobiotic chef or not? Is that kind of a weird thing to say?
I'm a journalist. They just needed somebody to come in. And that's my book over there. I'm serious. That's my book right there. I'm serious.
He's very serious. This is his book, Official Stories by Liam Scheff. Official stories exist to protect officials, but we are here during this show to be talking about food.
So I grew up in a family of doctors and scientists, so they were all very unhealthy and horrible people, every one of them. Such a Midwestern audience.
Even your mom?
Even my mother. That's a laugh line. Look at her. She's like a deer in headlights. These are jokes. These are jokes. All right. So many of the truth said in jest. So I grew up in a family of doctors and scientists, and they didn't know how to eat. They all had health problems. They all had personal problems. They drank too much. They ate too much. They ate the wrong thing. They didn't talk to each other. They talked at and over. Meals were combat times. They would debate, and they would one-up, and then they would look at my grandfather, who was the, capo di tutti capi at the, you understand? Like, are we right, Dad? Yes, you're right. And, so I had to get out of there to save my life. So when I was in my late teens, I became a vegetarian because I had eaten a lot of meat. And you can eat meat. I'm not going to be the police for that. But I grew up in parts of Pennsylvania. So we had like 5 meals a day, and 7 of them were meat. 2 of them were cheese. All right, you get where I'm going. And 1 was steak, wrapped in bacon, fried in butter. When you were sleeping, they would chew it up and spit it into your mouth, because you always had enough you always had enough protein. Oh my God, something's wrong. You need more protein. So I gravitated towards being a vegetarian because I just needed not to die. I was probably going to have a heart attack at 18. And I loved it, but I didn't know what to cook. I mean, there's a whole world of stuff out there. When you grow up with a microwave and a Fruity Pebbles box, you want food, but what is it? So I apprenticed with a macrobiotic cook in Philadelphia who was cooking for people who were sick and getting better. It was an astounding, wonderful, year, studying, and then I never stopped studying, and everywhere I went in the world I would pick up a dish, and the principle was find the best quality ingredients, and for me, I would leave out the duck or the whatever you guys eat around here, the Monsanto creatures, and I would just sort of make it. But I've gone a long way, and even the Jeffrey Smith Coalition, the GMO people? Yeah, of course we did. They've influenced me. I was one of those mildly smug vegetarians that said, well, I don't eat the factory farm food, right? I don't have as much to worry about. Oh, ho, ho. They came and they got all of us. So I'm cooking the cook stuff ahead of time. This is, I forgot. This is, you can pass it around, but it doesn't smell like much. You guys see this?
Red lentils.
Is that what they are?
Yes.
And then there's this bag of, how do you say this? Quinoa. Oh, yeah. So there's this stuff, which is a wonderful South American, right? And so we're just stealing it from them. They're all going hungry. I'm serious. Go look it up online. So the wonderful food from Peru or wherever, we're eating it now. It's full of protein. It's good for you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook this pot of quinoa. It's summer. I don't want to cook for too long. Once it gets to a certain point, I'm going to turn off the heat, and I'm going to chop vegetables. And then when it's over, I'm going to put the vegetables in and let them cook in the remaining heat, so you don't make them soggy. And you add the seasonings, and I'm going to split it up so we can have one that is, one that is
That is one word you can still use.
Yes. We were talking about a river system, so the dam came up. One that's Indian and one that's, I'm going to go for a kind of Italian, so I've marinated. You see, I've put the Italian herbs in olive oil and balsamic vinegar.
So Liam has one bowl with Italian herbs and balsamic vinegar and olive oil, and then you've got some spices that are more Indian-oriented, right?
I picked up a Hy-Vee curry, which I'm assured is the top brand that you can get. It's a tremendous curry.
And then what's the other one? Because you're going to do 3 different preparations, right?
Well, we're going to have dessert too, right? But I don't want to interrupt the movie. So when she does the movie thing, and the pretty girl in the back has got to leave, I always drive them away. I'm overly earnest. But I'm going to chop the vegetables, and I'm going to make a big bowl of the vegetables. And just very quick, now when I come back, I'm going to talk about the principles and the macrobiotic stuff. I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to chop the vegetables, and I'm going to make sure the hard, chunky vegetables are to one side so I can put them in first, because they, need just a little bit longer. That's one of the secrets of summer cooking. You don't want to overcook things. So I'll return it to our friend here, and then when we come back, can I talk a little about yin and yang?
You can do whatever you like, because even though it's my show, I'm going to allow it. But before we get to Bev Merson, I want to talk to Tom Allen, because Tom Allen he's such a great guy, and it's so much fun to listen to him sing. And if you weren't here or weren't listening last week, and Tom sang this great song by Melanie because we had Africa Engo on, and Africa is vegan. Obviously, that means that she's vegetarian also. And so you sang a song that Melanie wrote called I Don't Eat Animals.
I don't eat animals, and they don't eat me. It's a real cute song.
Yeah, it was really cute. So Liam's cooking with the seasons. This is what season?
This would be summer.
And so that means...
And that was not a joke, that particular line. That means that we've got a song called Summertime.
Right. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so summertime, man, the living's easy. Bev Merson, you've got something interesting that you're going to discuss this week, because usually you're talking about a food movie, but this is a little bit different, isn't it?
It is, Steve. It's different tonight, but it's all along the same vein. How many people here have been to film festivals? Ever been to a film festival? Great. Tom, where's the film festival that you've been to?
One in Colorado, and I've been one here in Fairfield, one in the Philly area.
And Rob, you've been to a film festival as well. Where's the film festival?
He can't answer you because he's way over on the other end of the room. So.
I had an interest in film festivals a long time ago. I lived in Toronto, and they always had a Toronto Film Festival for many, many years, which I used to go to. And I loved it. You saw films for the first time. You saw the premieres. You saw the people who directed it, who made it. There was a question and answer period. Well, I was looking around. Is anybody here subscribed to the Slow Food Movement emails? It's absolutely fascinating with what's going on with food in Europe and around the world. And in that email, I actually found something interesting, which had to do with a film festival, but it was a food film festival. And I thought, okay, well, we're talking about food films here. Why not talk about a food film festival? So I inquired, and I did a lot of searches to find more information. I actually finally came upon the actual Food Film Festival, which takes place in Amsterdam. It takes place in Amsterdam in March. And then I went into the program and looked at the program. They have about 40 movies that they show at this food film festival. And then I decided, well, I've got to see what the movies are about. So they have documentaries, they have animated films, they have shorts, And they have a question and answer period, and they have the people who've made the films talk about it. So I thought it'd be fun to just mention a few of the food films that were on the program. One of them I thought was really quite funny. It's called Making Hummus. It's the Hummus and War. Make Hummus and War. And what it is, it's a gentleman from the Middle East who absolutely loves hummus. And he decided he was going to find out where the best, it's make hummus and not war, excuse me, where the best.
That does change it a little bit.
It does, and especially in that area. And where he was going to find the best hummus. So he goes to, I don't know much about the film, but that's what the film's about. But it's an actual contest between who has the best hummus, whether Palestine has it, whether Lebanon has it, or whether Israel has it. So I thought that was really cute. They have a slapstick film that's about the, I don't know how they could do this, but it's slapstick about the use of a cookbook. Then there are another one's called Farmer Jack. It's an animated 14-minute film, and it's all about a small farmer who has a businessman and a scientist appear at his door. So we can imagine what happens from there. Another one is The Fruit Hunters, and it's about these people who really want to find exotic films, preserve them for posterity.
Exotic fruit, you mean, right?
I'm sorry?
Exotic fruit?
Exotic fruit. What did I say?
Films.
Exotic,
I'm sure that there's plenty of exotic
films.
films.
Too.
Right.
Exotic films and exotic fruit. And then there's a super short called The Nightmare of Grocery Shopping. And then there's another animated film which I thought was really cute. It's just about oranges. And it's oranges tell the whole story, what it's like to be an orange. So this is what I really thought was exciting for this week's little Cinebites. And I really encourage you to go to the food film site and take a look around, because there's blogs, there's information, and of course there's a lot of documentaries about what's current, and whether it be GMOs, factory farming, and the whole bit. So those are there as well. And not only that, they also have a guest speaker, a keynote speaker. Mark Bittman this year was the keynote speaker. He is an editor for New York Times, and he talked about all the main food issues. And this is the initiative of the youth food movement that came out of the slow food movement. They put this together, and their whole theme is about conscious eating. So they also have kiosks outside where people could go and buy local food. They have tastings. They also have a few people review food movie films and their favorite scenes from food movie. They call it mouth-watering scenes. So this is
that's great, Bev. Really. When you find out the information on the 2014 one, would you let us know?
Yes. And do you want to go, Steve?
Well, Bev, I want to make this announcement because I know that everybody's going to be pretty excited. Bev has offered to pay for the first 5 people that want to go. And so I'm going to be number 1, and that's great. Thank you very much for your generosity.
Steve, if I had the money, I'd pay for everybody to go. I would charter a plane, I'd charter a van, and it would be lots of fun.
Yeah, and you know what? It's a great idea, something we could do locally also. So it's something that we should keep in mind once the theater opens again. We should definitely do that.
Great idea, Steve.
Okay, Bev, thanks very much. Cinebites with Bev Merson. You're listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and we are visiting with Liam Scheff, who is cooking up. The smells are wonderful that are wafting through the room. And I just wanted to mention, because I think it's very interesting to me that the last show we did on macrobiotics was last summer, which is kind of funny that it's coming up again right at this time of year. And what was also interesting to me when I was reflecting on it was that during the course of this show, which has spanned about 7 years, we have done several shows on this type of topic. And interestingly enough, someone who was a big influence on you, Steve Gagne, who wrote The Energetics of Food, was a guest on one of our earlier shows.
Comment on Steve?
You can comment on anything that you like, or you can just go right into the food.
All right, I got to move back and forth. Let me ask you, is it easier if you point the thing over the microphone? We're having a microphone thing for the people because I'm going to be here and then here.
I'll follow you, but you have to make sure that I know where you're going.
So, I'm going to hurt him. He's the host. So, what are we doing? We're cooking seasonally. You don't want to cook much in summer. So, this was what? These small red lentils. You see, are very small, and they cook I'll even be louder. And they cook very quickly. they cooked in about 10 to 12 minutes. And let me put this under the can you guys see that? Okay.
What Liam's doing is he's just showing a pot of the red lentils to the audience, and there's herbs on top of that, right?
Right. So I put some basil in because you can get away with basil in Southeast Asian cooking. Now, what am I not doing? I'm not doing old-fashioned macrobiotic stuff, which got confused. The people who brought it were from Japan, a place that I happen to love, but Japanese food is very specific to a certain place called Japan. Macrobiotic cooking is...
That's weird, isn't it? Yeah.
I know. Keep Japan in your thoughts, everybody, genuinely. Because you guys know about that? Fukushima? No? Nobody? Fukushima? I didn't say it. You guys don't know about this? Fukushima? 460 tons of spent fuel sitting on the third and fourth floor of a... Pray for a little bit of divine intervention. So, the Japanese people who came over were George Ihara and Michio Kushi, and I've never been a hero worshiper, so I came in and I didn't, it was nice that they had brought it over, but it wasn't a big deal to me. The most important part was the concept of what is food? Because I grew up, again, and there were, meat was the food all of the year, and then in the summer you had corn, and then in the summer you had watermelon, and in the winter you ate ice cream, which didn't make sense. There's no frozen cow running around delivering Brazilian sugar from its mammary glands in the middle of December, but that's what ice cream is. No? Mammary glands? Oh, you guys, you're killing me. This Midwest. Pass this.
Liam's had it with the audience. He's going to warm them up by passing a bottle of Bacardi around, to get people going here. So now you can't talk without the microphone though. So
pass this around and smell this. Tell me what? Pass it around and smell. Don't spill it. You can eat.
Toasted sesame.
But just enjoy that, because this is a beautiful, beautiful smelling oil that we don't use a lot. We don't use a lot of toasted sesame.
Now that's interesting. Did you hear her remark? It costs too much. But the truth is, it is expensive, but you don't use very much of it in your food. So a little goes a very long way.
Well, you can buy a big bottle, and you can get it from Goldmine Natural Foods, or you can find a distributor, and you can get it for as cheap as olive oil. Genuinely, you can. So this is a wonderful aromatic oil that, and sesame, you can grow in this climate, even though we don't. What do we grow in this climate? Corn and soybeans. What did we used to grow in this climate? Everything. Who made that happen? Well, or lizard people, the Monsanto Corporation, right? So we're in Monsanto land, and we used to, this is the breadbasket. We used to have everything growing here. So let's look at some of the everything that still grows here. We have a beet. It's local. It's in season. Parsley is not just the thing that you throw away when you're done with the steak. Ask anybody in the Middle East. It's what, they eat a lot of garlic, so they need a lot of parsley. This is a local, right, from a local farm, zucchini. And does anybody know what this is? Yeah.
Kale.
Special kind of expensive kale that Hy-Vee paid for. Thank you very much. So this quinoa, which I was cooking, is done. It's essentially done. And I'm not going to cook it to death because it's summer. I would have turned it off before, but the thing was going on. So now I'm going to rush, and you guys can do commentary, and I'm going to cut all the vegetables very quickly, very, very quickly. When you cut a vegetable, you want to cut it for two things, so that it fits in your mouth. Genuinely, you have to think about this. And so that it cooks in the right amount of time for the amount of heat that you're going to apply to it. People don't, they're like, well, what do I do? How do I cut the vegetable? You cut it so that it's the right size to cook. I'm going to put it in the retained heat of a pot that I'm going to turn the stove off. Why? Because I want the vegetables to have a little zip, I don't want them to be like, the sort of Chinese, Swedish buffet that you sometimes get, like the combined and everything is the same color of gray, $5.99 a pound. I want the vegetables to retain some of their complexity. And some of their complexity is, this is a sulfuric vegetable. This is a strong thing.
Cabbage,
sorry. This
is a radio show. I'm just reminding you.
This cabbage, chou vert, as they say in France, is what they used to use to cure. Do you know what they used to use the juice to cure? Ulcers. And you can still do it. You can squeeze cabbage juice and. All right. So I'm going to cut these.
I'm going to ask you a question. What is this broth that's in the quinoa? Is it simply just water, or did you add something to it?
Well, there's a bottle of Bacardi on the table. There's a little curry powder. There's a little cumin. The curry powder is what? Mostly turmeric and chili and garlic. Cumin? Yeah, a cumin, coriander, cardamom, various chilies, various little spices that you can find. I was teasing the Hy-Vee. It's actually Frontier brand, which is nice. Hopefully they don't. Do you know they irradiate spices? Do you know that?
But they don't irradiate organic spices.
One hopes and prays. I'm going to cut. I'm going to move over so you can watch me doing it. When I cut vegetables, I pay attention to something, which is I pay attention to symmetry. It's one of the first lessons you'll get in a macrobiotic kitchen. Where's the symmetrical cut? Why? Because you're supposed to be paying attention when you're cooking. You're not putting it through the Cuisinart to make a bunch of discs. You're present. Your feet are on the ground. Your shoulders are, square to the cutting board. The cutting board is clean. Do you guys know how to use a knife? Everybody? Not like this. I'm putting my fingers out under the knife. It's a radio joke.
Nice job. You learn quickly. I like that.
So yeah, it's like a spider crab, and the knuckle that touches the blade is the first. Which knuckle is this? Third or first? I don't remember, but it's the one at the end of your finger. So when you're cutting, you can't cut your fingers. It's really important. You can do this. You can go fast. Now the trick is, you feed the vegetables with your thumb here. Don't overfeed it. I worked in restaurants twice. A third of an inch right through the thumb. Twice. The second time I went, are you kidding? The first time I was like, oh my God. The second time, dear, what's wrong with you? So I've never done that again. That food, now there's too much water in that, and sometimes you make a mistake. Sometimes there's too much water. Sometimes there's too much salt. What do you do when there's too much water? We'll get to that. I'm going to throw it back to you. I'm going to cut vegetables. Entertain the crowd.
We're going to see if anybody has any questions also. But meantime, you're listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. And I'm Steve Boss, and Robert is making all kinds of wonderful signs, and I think that you just want to have a clearer shot, right? Okay, good. Boy, that took some figuring out. And move this bowl too. Okay, now I've got it. That's perfect. Whew, that was probably the hardest part of the show. So, coming up next week on Great Taste, Gisela Isidori will be here. She'll be cooking here at Hy-Vee, so that's going to be fantastic. Those of you who have seen Gisela before in action, she is a 79-year-old whirlwind, and she totally wears me out. And I don't know what we're making yet because I'm finalizing the menu right now. She sent me all kinds of great ideas, but guess what? It will be Italian. There's no doubt about that. So Gisela will be here next Wednesday, and looking very much forward to that. I think Liam is, I wonder if you can describe, when you talked about the symmetry of your cuts, could you describe what that means? First of all, you're doing a carrot right now, and prior to that you did cabbage.
Okay. Well, my cooking teacher, my mentor in this would, and it sounds a little funny, and maybe it is, but can you guys see in that mirror? Really? Push it forward. Yeah. My teacher Jim would talk about, he would talk about a balanced cut. So I've cut it a diagonal. These pieces fit in your mouth. Why is Chinese food eaten with chopsticks? Because it can be. They chop everything before they get to the table. They don't bring half a cow and then a knife, and you have to do all the work. So let's say that I cut it a diagonal here like this. And Jim, I rarely describe this to people, but this is the vegetable.
So it's a carrot cut on a diagonal in about, what, you think about 1/8 of an inch?
Yeah, and instead of being French about it and worrying very much about the perfect shape, what I'm trying to get, again, you might think this is funny, but there's a poetry to it. You get a little of the top, a little of the bottom, You get some of the inside and you get the outside. Because vegetables are, in Chinese medicine and Taoism and all Eastern disciplines, all life is energy. And energy forms in particular patterns and pathways. So you see lightning in the sky and it has a particular pathway, sometimes called a Lichtenberg figure. It looks exactly, strangely, like the pattern of water on the land, like the veins in your arm. So nature uses these repetitive patterns, like the veins in leaves, these repeating patterns and themes, and because nature is very brilliant, much smarter than its little creation. That's us. So when you want to cut a vegetable, you have to think about what the vegetable is, how it grows. Carrot grows which way? Down. That's its nature. We eat this thing that spirals downward, literally spirals tightly downward. Apples grow? Way up in the air, at the end of a branch. When do apples grow? When, through the hot summer, they grow. So they accumulate that summer energy. There's a word for the summer energy and there's a word for the winter energy. And you've heard the words, and the words are yin and yang. Have you heard those words? Seen that black and white symbol? So it's not enough time to get into a deep analysis of that. Suffice it to say that you can see the concentric nature by looking at the cut cabbage here. You can see the concentric nature of life. You can see how it wraps up and around. This is how a cabbage grows. In Chinese medicine, you look at this as relating to organ systems in the body. You'd study it over time to see what happens if you just eat this, besides the obvious. No?
I got it,
all right.
Liam, yeah.
Little farty joke. Okay, so I had to say it. I had to go the whole way. So this is considered good for the stomach. It grows on the ground. It grows at ground level. This goes to the skin of the carrot, good for your skin, but it's good for the liver, cleans the liver. It goes into the internal organs. Now, there's something about cooking, and there's something about raw. Now, I'm going to keep chopping here, but
Before you get into that, could you just talk about your cut on the cabbage then?
well, that was a utility cut. I took out the core because I didn't, and I put it in because the core is pretty sulfuric, and it might bite a little, and you might not like that. You might think you don't like the food because you got a bite of rather pungent cabbage, but I'm used to it. I like it, but I didn't want to subject you to it. So I took out the core, cooked it, and the rest I cut so that I could get, 1/8 of an inch by 1.5 inches because I'm going to put it in hot water and I want it to cook quickly. But I better hurry and cut this and the beet and throw the beet and the carrot in very quickly because I got the lacinato kale and the squash which go in at the end, and I don't want those to be totally raw. So you're going to have to let me cut for a minute.
I'm going to let you do that, and then hopefully we can get back to our discussion because I think it's fascinating for people to have an understanding of the different energy patterns that are present in any food that we eat. Anybody have any questions that they want to direct to Liam right now? All right, hold on one second. We're going to come over here. We're going to run over here, and I'm getting out of sight of the camera, which Robert hates when that happens. What can I say?
Liam, I'd like to know, who is your mentor? Where did you study?
And you have to wait 1 second because I have to come back with the microphone. That's what happens. We're very technologically advanced here. So.
Let's talk about, I want to answer that question because he's a friend of mine. Let's talk about the beet for a second. Which way does this grow? Down, but out, right? Grows in summer. This is the color of? Blood. It's good for, it contains iron and chlorophyll. There's a certain homespun logic that you can apply to vegetables and by understanding them. Now, what happens when you cook? I didn't finish the sentence. Raw foodists, and I'll answer your question, raw foodists think that fire kills food. If you've ever lived in Maine, and I do often, you'll realize that you need to cook food sometimes or you're going to die. You will just drop dead on the street because you won't have that, fire energy in you. So plasma, which is the fifth form of energy, I'm not being esoteric or metaphysical, I'm talking about plasma physics that's reproducible in the laboratory. Plasma, which is the fifth form of energy, is a kind of energy, and human beings unlocked the energy of food many thousands of years ago by applying fire to it. You cannot eat quinoa and enjoy it unless you cook it. Try. Go ahead, get back to me. Rice, wheat, good luck. Kidney beans, you'll puke them out. There's some things you have to cook. There's some things you don't have to cook. But by cooking them, in the macrobiotic perspective, you energize them more, and they go deeper into the body. Really, deeper into the organs. They affect the organs more deeply. They give you a calm feeling. When you cook potatoes with whatever you cook them with, I cook them with ginger, a little lemon peel, turmeric, and you cook them, and they're so satisfying. You feel calm. That fire energy, it's nurturing. It nurtures what they call the jing of the kidneys. There are all sorts of words they have, but don't worry about that. So what's raw food good for? It is full of enzymes. It's great for gut bacteria. It's great for making you feel lighter, because God knows if you eat a Danish diet of pig liver and bread that's like a brick you could kill somebody with. I mean, these are like 3.5 pounds of dense rye corn, and they're wonderful, but you can eat a tiny piece, and you're sort of done. Give me a drink. There's a reason vodka goes with European food. No, really. It's yin and yang. One is expansive, one is contractile. One relaxes you, one tightens you. The idea is never to eat too much in an overly tight or an overly loose direction. So you don't want to eat all the sugar and the beer and the this and that. Well, naturally fermented beer is a food. It's actually food. It makes you a little woozy, but it is food. But Sprite and Coke are not food. The stuff in those comes from way far away. It's refined to the point of sort of being a cocaine, the way it affects your dopamine and the, what are those called? The hormones in your head that make you feel a certain way? Yeah, the way that it gets you, it gets you addicted anyway. It's very easy. Sugar's powerful that way. It turns to fat very quickly. Now you see I'm overcooking this. So off you go. My teacher was Jim Kaula. He was an artist. I'm going to go back and cut. He was an artist, and he nursed a couple of his, I don't know if this is too controversial for the center of the country, but he was and remains, happily, a gay man. Now, I don't know if that's troubling to anybody, but it took me by surprise because, I'm like, is he hitting on me, or is he? But he never did. He was just my cooking teacher. So I learned a lot about that community of people who are really pushed to the outskirts. And what Jim did was Jim cooked, and Jim grounded himself, and he was an anchor for that community, which very often in the cities can get lost in drugs and being lost in general for a variety of social reasons. You can't get married, you can't own property, you don't engage in the same way, so that's problematic. And Jim was just this, he wasn't an overly emotional guy. He was intellectual and damned intelligent, and he had every philosopher's book that you could have on his bookshelf, and I'd go in and we would talk about the cut of a vegetable and the seasons that they grow in and how crazy Bill Clinton was being, and whatever else was on the agenda that day. And then we'd go about and do the deliveries and come and prepare sometimes for the next day's meal, or I just went to my other job, because I didn't get paid for that, but I got paid in a way that was more valuable than anything I've done in my whole life. I've been able to cook my way out of any sickness that I had, knock on wood. We're not better than anybody else, but you pay attention to food and energy. I've been useful to so many of my friends. I've helped people either lose weight or gain weight if they needed, just by adjusting whether they were cooking or going more raw and getting rid of the things that don't have anything to do with the local environment, which is hard. It's hard, right? It's hard to kick sugar. Anybody? Hard to kick sugar. It is addictive. It's really hard to do. That's so look at this little part of the beet. Nobody eats this. We're going to eat it. This is the part where the beet connects.
This is the top of the beet.
This is the top, but I've cut it out and it just looks like a little pyramid now. But this is the part where the beet connects to the leaves. So this is a connecting point. And if you look at it in Chinese medicine, you'd say, well, we're full of connecting points. Why don't I want to eat something that contains, that energetic place where we connect? So that's part of cooking when you think about it this way. Now I'm going to chop.
All right, you can chop. Now, I want to also mention to you that you don't have to feel pressured to get anything done at a certain point, because we're here, and even though the show may be over in terms of our discussion, for the 60 minutes, we're going to hang around and enjoy what you're fixing. Bob, you had a question?
Yeah. Liam, this is a serious question. With regards to... Not from you. With regards... You had said that your family was brought up eating a certain way. what was the experience like, sort of breaking away from that in terms of your connection with? Did they think you were strange? Did they resent the fact that you sort of broke with the family tradition? And part of the reason I ask this is I went through some of that. Now that it's been years and years that there's been, I've been brought back to my family and all that. So it's really a personal question for you.
No, your answer is going to be my answer.
No, I mean, I'm asking you everything's fine with my family right now, but for a while they thought, I was either strange or gay, or not that there's anything wrong with being gay, but for them it was.
Yeah.
This show is really, I'm not even sure what's going on. Anyway, Liam.
Not that there's anything wrong with being a vegetarian. Yeah, I remember my family, we're not close because they're just sort of medical central, Right. There's not a lot you can say to some people. Hey, why don't you stop eating that? No. Okay. I got to go. There's a whole world of good people out there that we're sort of born into a family, and if you're lucky, you see how closely I have to pay attention when I'm talking because I'm going to cut my fingers off. Oh, my God. Okay, I'm going to cut now. No.
No pressure. Remember, you don't have to.
No, but
all right.
No,
so we're all right. Well,
once I chased my mother around the kitchen going, why did you feed me this my whole life? Why? Just once. It was like 20. And I'd come back, home and say, did you look at the ingredients? I held something up. Did you ever read this? What's wrong with you? Just, so I stopped. There's only so much you can say. You can't beat up on them forever.
Really?
Well, you can try.
You can try, but it's really true.
Unless they have money. What's the point?
The thing is that really the main thing is, educating ourselves, educating our kids, educating our family, educating our friends, and that's it's important to be an educated consumer, whether it's food that you're talking about or whether you're talking about, many different aspects of life. Because if you're not an educated consumer, then, for example, I remember when we had our first child, we did this form of childbirth called Bradley. It was called husband coach childbirth. But the basic philosophy behind Bradley was the hospital doesn't exist to take care of your needs. It exists to take care of its needs. And that's fair. That's really okay. So what Bradley, the Bradley method said was, you've got to learn how to take care of your own needs when you go to the hospital. And that's the same thing with food. We may not like some of the things that large corporations do with our food supply. Well, then we, as an educated consumer, we have to know what it is that we, want to eat, what we should be eating, and what's better for our health.
And we use the beet greens. Not afraid of beet greens.
Should we be afraid of beet greens?
I was anybody afraid of beets growing up? I was. They tasted terrible, and they came from a can. They were like, "What is this? It's weird Jell-O stuff. I hate it."
No, beets are terrific, and the greens are great whether you fix them in what you're doing right now, putting them together with everything else, or whether you fix them by themselves. I love a little beet grain sautéed in olive oil with a little garlic and salt. It's wonderful.
Gee, I could do that right now.
We're happy if you do. Now, what about dessert? I'm interested to hear your thoughts about dessert.
I gotta cut the apples. That I can use help with. So let me get them with the vegetables, and then we're gonna cut apples.
And so, apple is going to be our dessert. That's apple pie.
Everybody has to eat an apple, the whole thing, seeds and all.
It's not apple pie. I'm gonna be disappointed.
I can make an apple pie in 10 minutes. We're gonna very quickly make there are different ways to cook fruit to make it nice. One is called a compote. Really, you just cook it for a very short time. It's summer, so you don't want to make an apple pie. It's too hot. You don't want to bake in the summer. You don't want to put on the stove. You're kidding. So what do you want to do? You just want to put it on you want to essentially chop them thin. I use a little pinch of salt in everything. A little pinch of sea salt in everything. It's good when it's hydrolyzed, when it's mixed with the water from the food. It's not so good when you're eating big chunks of road salt, like on Philadelphia pretzels. Have you ever had those? They sell them like $5 for $1, and it's a dare. Well, can you eat this? It's covered with road salt. I'm chopping.
Okay, he's chopping. So I want to go back then to the concepts. We've talked about yin, expansive, cool, dark, relaxing, yang, contractive, hot, bright, and energizing. What about fire? You talked about that, energy, raw foodists, and thinking that enzymes are the most valuable thing. And you talked about, the main example, which I thought was very interesting. But don't you just feel for consumers? Because I do. Because I think it's just, there are so many different schools of thought out there that people have to, I think, be subjected to, is the way I'd like to say it. I mean, right now, one of the biggest things that's going around, I noticed, is this whole idea that you should stay away from all grains altogether, that you should live for at least a year. It's going to take a year to rid yourself of all the grains in your system.
Yes, that's a good one. That's very funny. I don't know what to do about that. The first temples that we ever had were granaries. You can go and study ancient civilizations, and they worshipped at the grain. All of the old stories of all the old gods, the corn god was the thing that in some of the Native American traditions would wrestle with the hero and then die and then come up as corn. They didn't hate it. It was their, what is it? Let's look at it as a plant. It grows through the summer and into the fall, so it can take a little bit of cold. It's a seed, which means it can give birth to an entirely new plant. Seeds have a lot of energy. So if you look at it as a seed, we need a lot of energy to keep going. What a raw food. Listen, I've gone on a raw food diet for periods when I felt like it. You always run into that point where you feel like your gears are grinding. There's just something not happening. You're not producing enough glycogen for your liver. Carbohydrates and the stuff that we store energy as are about the same thing. So the anti-carb people maybe, or should say, anti-refined carbohydrates. Or look at this white, you guys know glyphosate? Glyphosate, Roundup? Roundup? Okay, glyphosate's the tech name. This stuff is just poison, and it's on everything. So how many, some of my friends, I don't want to embarrass anybody here, but points out that maybe people aren't so wheat allergic as they are glyphosate allergic. So, this stuff ruins the microbial balance of your intestine. And now everybody in medicine, 40 years later, after the old hippie diet said you have to ferment things, are saying, well, it looks like you have to ferment things. Oh, look, you make all your immune cells for your body in the lining of your gut. Maybe we shouldn't give you things that kill the immune cells in your gut. Wait a second. Hold on. I need to do a study. Somebody give me $40,000. You guys know how that works? The sciences?
You've got 20 seconds to tell them.
Really?
All right, 25.
All right. I want to hear from them. They're so quiet, and I don't know if I have a big booger on my nose. What do you guys think? How many of you are organic? How many of you?
We're all organic, aren't we?
No.
Aren't we? We're all organic beings?
No.
Liam, we're going to get to this. We're gonna deal with this question, but first we're gonna have to actually go. So this has been Great Taste on KRUU.
Drummed out of Fairfield.
100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. 60 minutes of delicious radio.
Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.